Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark. You typically, and you may hear pieces of this conversation from the Dr. William Clark podcast. So we'll give that quick introduction. This is the Dr. William Clark podcast. In other cases, if you're hearing a snippet of this and want to hear the rest of this conversation, I'm going to encourage you to go over to nonprofitfundingstrategies.com, scroll down, register for the what you should know before applying for grants masterclass and mastermind group. Once you register, you can go ahead and hear the fullness of the conversation. And the reason why I'm giving that promo is just because, one of the things that we talk about often in our nonprofit world, at least in the conversations I have with all of you, is the importance of generating revenue. And we're just not talking about grant revenue. We're talking about all types of revenue sources for your nonprofit. It is doable. You can do it. You can make it happen. And actually, right over my left shoulder here, you can see my Green Book Sustainable. That was my doctoral thesis, which is a great segue into introducing my guest, because my guest, who's my friend, my brother from another mother, we went to school together. We have a whole lot of things in common, but Dr. Philip Foster is here to have, I think, an enlightening conversation and to talk about ways. And I think, Philip, this is probably the best way to frame this conversation, because this is how we talked about it weeks ago. But I think the topic of this conversation or this talk should be around leverage, which plug my first book, which is right there on my left shoulder, the orange and white one. It's all about leverage, which is how, when you and I had this conversation weeks ago, I related to everything you said. So let me just welcome Dr. Foster into the room. Dr. Foster, welcome. How are you, sir?
Thank you, bro. You're doing well. It's so good to see you. We haven't jumped on a video in a while. Maybe even a year.
It's been a minute. It has it? Well, you know what? It has to be, because I'm in my new office. And the last time it's been more than a year. The last time you were and I were together, I was recording in my old office across the campus there. So,
yep.
It's been a year. It's been a minute.
I would add, if I had, if I'm growing out a beard, we'd look just alike. So.
There you have it. So let's try to set the stage. And for the students watching this class, this is going to be a casual conversation for the snippets of this conversation that will become a podcast. Again, this is going to be a casual conversation. So this isn't one of the traditional, I'm interviewing Philip and there you go. No, he doesn't get that treatment. This is a conversation amongst friends, entrepreneurs.
Kind of like eavesdropping in on like a coffee house session where we're just sitting there chatting with each other.
Facts. This is exactly what it is. So let's give context. So really quick, Philip's a consultant, professor, author. I mean, am I missing something? Dad, husband.
Something. I mean, I got a lot going on.
He's all those things. But so here's the context of the conversation Philip and I had several weeks back. There's always a question, Philip, about how to create movement in your business to generate, obviously, revenue, cash flow, action of some sort by your customer. You and I had this conversation. It was a late night conversation, at least for me, because I'm an hour ahead. And I shared movement that was happening in my business, which at the time I talked to you, I was very proud of, because I think, we started the years really, really slow. Things are growing. And I don't know how we got on this topic that night, but you then started to talk to me and remind me about the principle of leverage. And it was so fascinating, because I'm listening to you as if I never knew this information. But then you kept talking, and literally probably 2 minutes before I hung up is when I got it. It like clicked. I got it. And you just were drilling down on this concept of, dude, you got to leverage your time. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but, however you want to go with this conversation,
steal it.
By all means, just go ahead. Like, just talk to us about leverage. Talk to the student in the masterclass, the audience member of this podcast, who's trying to figure out revenue sourcing or sources for their nonprofit, and they're feeling like, I want to do a little bit more. Can you just teach me? So have at it. We'll have this conversation, but that's kind of the bulk of what we're going to talk about today, guys.
So before I even jump into that, I want to just mention there is no such thing as a one size fits all. So any examples that I might give or William and I might throw about, it's not about reproducing exactly that. We know that if you go and buy a McDonald's franchise and you put it where they tell you it's going to sell right, and you sell it exactly the way it's duplicatable, you know you're going to make $1 million a year minimum. That's duplicatable. That's not what we're talking about. That's a one size fits all for a particular model. Okay. What we're talking about are concepts and best practices that you can take and lay over your organization, whether it be for profit, not for profit. This is not meant to be specific to an industry. Okay, this is supposed to be germane to business, and really, as I've said to William, when you're talking about not for profit, that's kind of a misleading term because not for profit is an IRS moniker. It's a label that's put on you by the IRS for tax purposes. At the end of the day, you're still a business. Period. Full stop, as they say. So let's talk about leverage. How many hours do you have in a day? 24, right? And out of the 24, you can only work so many hours before you are worthless, right? I personally have worked probably, I don't know, 18, 19 hours straight on a project I was doing. And by the end of it, I literally passed out. You're worthless if you work 24 hours. You're worthless if you work over a certain number of hours. So at the end of the day, you can only work so many hours. Most people work 10 to 12 at the top end, right? I don't know how many do you normally work, William?
12 to 16, give or take.
Yeah, and so I mean, you're doing your day job, you're doing your not-for-profits, or you're hustling on other things. I mean, we're busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question, though, and this is where our conversation comes into this, I asked you how many customers, clients, individuals can you meet with under your current system? Now, most people, if we're talking about a consultant, coach, some sort of service provider, even a not-for-profit, you're only able to meet with or interact with so many constituents, people you're providing services to, customers, whatever you're going to call that person or persons. You can only meet with so many of them in a given day. You as an individual. And as an organization, you can only meet with and get through the system as many people as you have the number of employees times that many people you can see. So let's say that your average client meeting is an hour, just for sake of argument, and you have an 8-hour business day. That means you can only meet with 8 customers at a given time. Now, that doesn't include any breaks, restroom, snack break, get some water, go take a walk around the block, take a phone call, make phone calls, whatever. It doesn't include any of the other things that you do in a general day. So if you include all those things in there, let's say you can only meet with 6 customers a day. Now, if you're doing this for profit, 6 customers, or not for profit, and you're going out and meeting with 6 different people to try to raise funds, you get the picture. You can only meet with 6 people. So on the customer side, if a customer is worth $10 and you meet with 6 of them, that means you made $60 that day. So you're limited, you're capped by the number of hours that you can physically work. And this is where we start talking about leverage. Now, obviously, I didn't come up with this idea of leverage. It's nothing new. In fact, we can look at time leverage going all the way back to, when we're talking about business side, we typically hear time leverage used in the context of multi-level marketing, If you're old school like I am, you would have heard the Amway thing where they say you got to leverage your time, you got to get a network. And so we're not trying to sell you soap or do anything like that. What we're trying to get you to see is that time leverage is about maximizing that hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours in a day, and see more customers doing less work. And that is really where that conversation went that evening. And, you know, I think I probably started messing with you a lot on that conversation, because I was really hitting home. No, you gotta understand this. You can only meet with so many people in a given time. Now, why is this important? If we look at the context of a post-pandemic world, we're leaving this, hopefully, we're leaving this COVID-19 time frame in history. We're leaving it and moving forward. We're finding that businesses are attempting to do more with less human capital, less people. In fact, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm done with this foolishness. I'm going to go work for myself. I'm going to start a business. And then they run into this reality. I can only meet with so many customers at a time. And so we have to find mechanisms, tools, techniques that allow us to leverage our time. How's that for an overview of what we were talking about?
So that is a perfect segue. I'm going to pause here and tell our podcast listeners, thank you for listening. This is the Dr. William Clark podcast. We'll catch you next episode. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you got to go to nonprofitfundingstrategies.com, log in and register for our What You Should Know Before You Apply for Grants Masterclass. And you'll hear the rest of this conversation, and you'll have access to over 50 classes that I personally teach about the 3 strategies and secrets to fundraising. With that being said, Dr. Foster, thank you for this snippet. For the rest of us who are listening through the classroom, please continue. This is a great opening for, and I like what you said when you specified and said time leverage, because like the visual I have that night we talked, and even now, is the simple version of leverage, which is you have this stick with little strength to it. But if on the right incline, it can lift the heaviest boulder or rock. And the time leverage, as you're talking about, is the same concept. So please, continue from there.
So I know that you have an audience that covers the gamut. And so we can start from the spiritual side of this all the way to the secular side of this conversation when it comes to leverage. You think about leverage from a scriptural standpoint. Let's go all the way to the spiritual side. The reason why Jesus got disciples is all about leverage, okay? It wasn't simply because he knew he only had so many days on earth and he was going back, all right? So it's about teaching someone, leveraging that so that he had himself plus 12, okay? So he had 13 times the leverage, because it was him plus 12. Now, obviously, at some point, he exited the picture and it was 12, but what did the 12 do? They went and leveraged their time, and they got more disciples. Okay, so we go from the spiritual side now to the secular side. Take that concept forward. What you just did in that little snippet deal for your podcast is about leverage. Let me explain. You talked about 50 video trainings that you have in your archive. Now you think about it. Your average video is what, an hour long, maybe 2 hours long?
A training video, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just say an hour for the sake of the discussion. You did that one time, and you may have had 10 attendees or 100 attendees. It doesn't matter. But the point is, you did that video, put it in the archive, and now you don't have to do that training ever again. That doesn't mean you won't do it. That doesn't mean you won't talk about some of those topics again. What it means is that you did that. You have not only touched the lives of those 10 original attendees or 100 original attendees, but now you multiply that by the number of people that come to your platform over and over and over again, and you have it set up in that platform so I might say, well, I need to see that video again. So I go back and watch the video. You have leveraged your time, and you simply look at the amount of time it took you to record that, prepare it and record it, and you divide that by, the number of people, and that gives you, what your leverage is. And so, not divide, but multiply, excuse me. The point is, you've got to find tools and techniques that allow you to do what you do best over and over and over again for mass audience. You're making money off of that, or you're receiving donations off of that, but you haven't done any more work. Does that make sense? I see him shaking his head. Yes.
Makes a ton of sense.
This is what happened to me. My head went. When
Makes
I finally
a ton
got
of
that.
sense.
The problem is this, as I'm seeing it, and this is what I teach in my inner circle that I teach for business owners or individuals that want to do startups. A lot of times people will say, hey, I want to start a business. And I'll say, great, what do you want to do? They said, well, I want to do a mobile car washing business. Hey, that's a great idea. In fact, a year ago, I would have said that's a fantastic idea, because people go to work in an office and they don't have time to get the car washed, and they like it detailed, and they like, the tires look good and the chrome to be just right. Problem is, we all are working from home right now. So a mobile car wash is probably not the best idea right now. But if someone came along and they said, hey, I want to start a business, and I said, great, what are you good at? And they said, well, I'm really good at teaching people how to speak. I teach people. I'm kind of like a vocal coach. I teach them how to teach. I teach them how to stand. I teach them how to hold themselves, maybe move their hands, how they scan. So you say, okay, I think you can make money doing that. How are you going to reach people? I don't know. I'm thinking about, I'm going to get 3 clients a week, and I'm going to make, $50 a client. That's $150 a week. And so I look at that and I say to them, you only have so many hours in the week. So if you're working with them for an hour a day or an hour a week, and there's 40 hours in the week you want to spend, you can only see 40 customers in a week. And oh, by the way, there's no breaks in there. So you're going to be exhausted. And the bigger issue in this is not the fact that you've saturated your time, but you can only make so much money in 40 hours. So, if you're doing $50 an hour, it was, what did I say, at 40 hours a week, you can only make $2,000 a week. Now, that's a lot of money for someone, especially when you're looking at it as $8,000 a month. But you're exhausted at the end of that month because you're working 40-hour weeks straight, no breaks, and you can only make $8,000 a month. And so where leverage comes in is you say, how can I work with 50 customers a week and only work 1 hour? And that's where you use technology like this, where you get on a video and you do the video training, and you have it set up where each time you get someone jumping what we call the hot seat, which I'm in the hot seat right now with William, and you get to work one-on-one with these individuals. So now you're working with 50 customers a week, 1 hour a week, and that is 50 times 50 is 2,500. You have increased your profit by $500, and you're only working 1 hour as opposed to 40. So now you start to see where the power of leverage comes in. Now, how you get those 50 people into your stream of income, that's a whole other conversation we can have. The point is, you've got to find a way that you can reach a wider audience without killing yourself. That's where the power of leverage comes in.
That see, and I think you talked about tech leverage now, and you're talking about time leverage, and I think um, the specific strategy you gave me, which I'm not going to talk about in this forum, because I think people need to pay for that. If they're
That's
going
right.
to, if they need a cheat
See,
code.
now you're leveraging your money. Get the cheat code.
But what I would tell you, I think that the cheat code you gave me was such a common sense thing. Now, I will say that when it dawned on me what you were actually suggesting that I should do, um, I will say that you have to be at a certain space and place in your career to do specifically what you said that I should do. That advice might not fly for the average person, right? And being in a position of influence, leverage, access, I'm able to kind of execute the specific strategy you
Mm-hmm.
gave me. But the principle, I think, at its core, is still true. So, for example, I have I think it's a good example. So part of the reason why I'm in the nonprofit space is because of my love for people, the way I feel people who are dealing with high end barriers should be treated, my personal philosophy. Now, that love for people came from a time in my career when I was working in public housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell my staff that if you are wasting your time working for me and you're not learning, you're not mastering the skills and the tools and the resources I'm giving you, then you're wasting your time. Now, people spend time complaining about their salary and the lack thereof, or they wish they can make more or they're worth more. And they spend more time complaining about that as opposed to looking at, as you talked about, time leverage, that you are being compensated to actually learn. Now, you look at it and say, I'm being compensated to do a job. That's fine. There are people that do that, and that's the end of their blessing, if you will. The true blessing is looking at your career as an opportunity to learn, being paid to learn, being paid to grow, being paid to master, because what ends up happening is that in my case, in your case, in the case of people we know, the things that we do so well really are things that have been established in our formidable years. And formidable years doesn't always mean younger years. I mean, it's going to inherently mean younger, but formidable years meaning my habits, my good habits have been formed when I was at this unique place in my career. And it has become a part of my thinking. So what you taught me wasn't something that was hard to implement because I've been practicing time leverage since way back when. Matter of fact, you're the one that taught me. You are the one that taught me the cheat code to the doctoral program. And I passed that secret on to all my friends, especially those who go to Regent. Shout out to Regent. But I passed that secret on to all my friends on how to win. And I'm mad that I didn't know the cheat code earlier, but I got it just in time before it was too late. That cheat code is the same principle you're talking about. It's just time leverage. I mean, I think we can talk about
It's
that.
leverage.
It's all about leverage. And I think we can talk about this example because, you and I use it and I use your secret actually for my Facebook marketing strategy too. When you talked about how do I get my clients, it's the same concept, which is ultimately, at the doctoral level, particularly if you have a terminal degree or applied degree, you got to conclude your degree with this product, a written product. And what Philip told me years ago, I was probably 2 semesters in, he said, you got to treat every discussion board as a piece of your paper. See, I was caught up in trying to get published in my first year, and I was getting jealous of everybody because everyone was getting this approval to publish, and I wasn't. And you gave me the cheat code, and I said, okay, well, let me ignore what everybody else is talking about. And the cheat code really works when you reply to other people's posts with your own lens, because what they talk about in their post expands your topic if you know how to do it. And so ultimately, I started doing it, and there's no fruit from it until you get to the end of that semester, or even in the midpoint, you start to realize, well, let me take this discussion and this discussion. I got a midterm paper and I got an end of semester paper, and I'm not stressed out. And then let me put all this together. And now I got a end of degree paper. And so that cheat code, that time leverage has been a gift that I pass on willingly because you gave it to me. And as I've been building my marketing strategy has nothing to do with the Facebook ads I run, but it has everything to do with the same cheat code that you gave me from the doctoral world, which is somebody posts a question in one group, and I'm giving away my secret, but whatever, right? And I respond, especially if it's something relative to. You did a actually you're paying for it. I love that. And so I respond in one group, but my response I dictate it. It's a very thorough response. Hit submit, but then I copy my response and the question and post in another group as a Q&A because people have questions, but they're not all in the same group. And now one piece of response in a comment becomes evergreen content that then ropes in other people from other walks of lives that want to know more about what I'm selling, what I'm teaching, where can they find me, where can they access me. And I didn't have to go fishing trying to come up with, this dramatic piece of content. No, the content comes from the Q&A and me engaging, and again, utilizing that content like you told me to replicate it and leverage it.
So yeah, that's great. I'm sitting here, I'm tripping down memory lane because I distinctly remember the conversations that we had about the doctoral program. And
let's clarify, earned doctorate degree. We earned ours. Just continue.
But so corrected. So my point is this. When you look at everything that goes on, if you looked at your life in a linear way, from point A to point B, everything that happens between the pages, the binding of the book, if you will, of life, that is all experiential. That's all the stuff that we carry with us as part of our toolbox of life, okay? Our experiences, good and bad, the ups, the downs, everything. That's all part of our experiential life, okay? And so I want to push back on one thing for you because I think this is really important, especially for those that are listening to this and they're getting started. I don't want you to think that you have to wait until you get your master's degree or you have to wait to get your doctorate, earn your doctorate, and have some interaction with some guy that's a year or two ahead of you in the program or a lady a year or two ahead in the program to give you a cheat code of some sort. You don't have to wait for all of those moments to arrive at the place you need to be right now. And so here's what I mean by that. Someone out there in the world, whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit, has less experience than you currently have right now. You may have just a centimeter more knowledge or experience than they have. But the point is, you have something they don't have. You have something they don't have access to, and that is knowledge, that's experience that they have not yet reached. And so my point in this is, if you are a beginner, if you're a startup, and really I work with mostly startups and small businesses that are trying to scale, trying to grow. If you're getting started, don't sit there and say, I have nothing to offer, because you do. There's someone out there that doesn't know how to do what you know how to do. And this concept of time leverage and technology leverage and leverage of life is transferable. Again, there's no such thing as a one size fits all, but the basics, the premise here, the best practices can be integrated and wrapped around what you're trying to accomplish in your business. I don't care if you're a digital business or you're a traditional, business that does things in person, whether it be lawn care or you're selling jewelry in a jewelry shop. There's ways to use these techniques to leverage your time. Now, obviously, what we tend to talk about more in this concept that William and I are talking about really involves technology and online, or at least a hybrid of that where there's technology and online video of some sort that's taking place. If you think about 20 years ago, which is going to date me now because I'm 51. So 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, the way people leverage their time is they created cassette tapes, and then there were CDs, and somewhere in the middle of all that was VHS tapes. Now I'm going old school here. For those of you who are 20 years old and you don't know what a VHS tape is, there's this thing called Google.com. Go and type in VHS videotape. In fact, when you hear some old geezer like me say, "Hey, I'm going to videotape that," that's what we're talking about. William's about ready to fall over there. All right, I went from preaching to meddling, right?
Funny.
So anyhow, I wanted to say that because I don't want someone to listen to this and say, okay, well, I'm going to check out because this doesn't have anything to do with me. This has everything to do with you, because you can use these techniques exactly where you are right now.
Man, so let's keep this going. So the 3 secrets, what my students know, Philip, since they've enrolled in my class, they know the 3 secrets, which is public information on my website. But the 3 secrets that I talk about to raising serious money include secret number 1, a clear strategy matters. It's the 3rd fastest way to raise money for your nonprofit. Secret number 2, performance matters is the 2nd fastest way. Secret number 3, relationships is the fastest way to raise money. In all 3 of those secrets, leverage has to be at play, right? So let's go step by step, if you will. Go down this lane with me. When it comes to strategy and it comes to developing a plan to get from point A to point B, launching to raising money, when you are launching a program to be funded, the concept cannot be that I, as a new organization, will have multiple programs that are at my disposal to operate and then have funders pick one. No. That's not using leverage. That is taking away from leverage. That is subtraction. That is division. Leverage is about addition and multiplication. At the end of the day, what you got to do is focus on your one thing, your one program. And this is going to be hard for newbies to hear, but focus on your one program. The leverage comes in is when you have this one program that is layered by multiple layers of funding. Now, I'm sharing this strategy with you as a cheat code within the masterclass because I do this every day. When I'm pitching funders, I'm pitching the same program. Now, I may tweak language here and there, but the foundation, the fundamentals of the program is the same. We leverage that one program to get multiple streams of income. I mean, for one, we're getting grant money, we get sponsorship money, but we recently got funding to start a staffing agency off of this foundation, this core program we're offering. It's just one thing. Now, we serve multiple clients, we serve multiple age groups, multiple genders, multiple ethnicities, multiple cities, one program. That's just secret number 1. Did you want to comment on that, which is a strategy? It's the fastest way to raise money and how leverage works with that?
Yeah, sorry, my microphone went mute. Can you hear me?
No, so yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You raise a really good point in that. And this is a conversation that you and I had a month or so ago. And that is the KISS method. Keep it simple. Silly, stupid, whatever you want to say. Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, so however you want to put that at the end there. If we want to be PC, you could say silly, right? But the point is, keep it simple, right? And this is something you and I talked about, because a lot of times, especially in the newbies, the greenhorns, what happened, or as my kids call them, the noobs. What happens is you have this fantastic idea, and you come up with this 16-layer deep, I call it, a 16-layer dip, right? Because it's like, you go into a party and you're dipping into something, you're digging down into it. The point is, it's really complicated, okay? And what William's teaching here is keeping it simple. If you want the fastest route to success, don't make it complicated for your users. And I'll give you a good example. I bought this pair of earbuds. They're wireless earbuds. You see them in my ear right now. I needed them because I had these wires going to my, jack on my laptop, and I kept pulling it and it was ripping. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get wireless. Well, this is JLab. It's like a $30 pair of earbuds. And I'm not making any money telling you about this. But the point is, this this pair that's in my ears, very simple. They pop in there. There's little magnets. Uh, if you want to recharge it, this thing pops out of the bottom. You recharge it. When you're done, you stick them back in the cradle. When you need them, you put them in your ears. You don't have to sync them with anything. It's simple. It's stupid simple, right? $30. Now, I have another pair that I love. They're my Raycons, and you have to sync them, and they're like studio quality, and there's all this craziness. These were $90, $30, $90. I had to do a lot of work for this one. Guess what? I really like these. Same thing happens with your business. You don't want to make it complicated for your customers, because guess what? If you're going to make them jump through 5 fiery hoops to get to what they want for $1, and the other person will sell it to them for $2, and you don't have to do anything, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go pay $2 and be done with it. So keep it simple. When you're leveraging stuff, also leverage simplicity.
Yeah, what he said is true. I have, and I've been coming, as a seller, as a marketer, as a business owner. There's this weird moment when you're trying to price out your product and trying to price it right so that you can get reaction from customers, and embracing the mentality that whatever the price is, cheap or expensive, man, it just has to be stupidly simple, man. Which leads me to my second secret to fundraising, which is performance matters and is the second fastest way to fundraising. Now, this is a secret people don't think about. People think about secret 1 and secret 3, relationships and strategy. They don't think about number 2. So here's the way that I've taught it in one of my classes in a master class. If you receive funding that's multi-year funding, but it's a 1-to-1-to-1 contract, which means it's year to year, but the potential 3 years, the fastest way to unlock the remaining 2 years is to perform well within the first year. And if you're smart, you perform well within the first quarter of that first year. And by doing that, by performing well, you have in effect raised 3 times the amount of money, if not more. You can do the multiplier math there, within a 3-month segment, and I have unlocked multiple years of funding by way of performing within your work. Now, why am I talking about the first quarter? Because the first quarter is when everybody's most excited. That's when you have the most energy. It's like waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's when the best time to get work done. That's the best time to work out. That's the best time to fill in the blank. The first quarter is 5 o'clock in the morning for a grant, especially if it's a multi-year grant. When you set the tone and establish good habits within the first quarter of that first year, you can unlock multiple quarters. So I'm going to do the math: 4, 8, 11. Yeah, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11. You can unlock 11 more quarters of revenue, because what people don't realize is that when you stink up the joint, especially in the first year, deep in the contract, our terminology is terms that says we can terminate the contract because it's not a 3-year binding contract. It's only 1 year, right, which means that you can lose money within the first quarter, or you can make money in the first quarter. This is why I teach this secret about performance. And this is why I caution a lot of my clients and students about rushing out to get grants. Because now when you start to make major money, when you start to partner with larger organizations and you can't deliver, you can lose money because you're so busy trying to pretend to do something you cannot do. Now, before Philip goes, the leverage point that I want you to focus on as it relates to this conversation is the leverage is created within the first quarter. You can't forget that. That if you establish habits, operational standards, etc., within the first quarter of that grant, then you can know that you can unlock the remaining years of that grant. Therefore, put it in an autopilot and fundraising off of that same performance to raise additional money, which goes back to secret number 1.
So if we take this from the for-profit side now, because you've done so well talking about the not-for-profit side, the same concept flows, because if you don't perform well in the first week of that contract. Now, the way I work is I have a membership platform. And so, it's a month-to-month deal, and you pay for that every month. It's an automatic membership, like your, subscription based. And so if I don't do well in that first week or second week, guess what? They're not going to renew for the second month, the third month, the fourth month. And the idea is to get 12 months out of them at least. And when you're doing 12 months at $49 a pop, and you're multiplying that by 100, clients, you obviously start seeing leverage really start to happen, right? And so the performance part works on the for-profit side just as well as the not-for-profit.
It just works. So here's the last secret. I know we're pressed for time. The third secret is relationships bridge gaps.
I'm good.
Okay. Relationships bridge gaps, and it's the fastest way to fundraise. Knowing a person can unlock so much in terms of resources, because while Philip may be a funder, one of the things that I talk about in the masterclass, and y'all hear me say this all the time, funders, they gossip. Everyone gossips. And if Philip is a funder and he has a wonderful experience with me, guess what he's going to do? He's going to gossip about me. He's going to tell his funder friends, hey, you got a $300,000 grant, you might want to go see William, right? You need to go talk to him and his organization. You got a $50,000 grant, yeah, go see William. They'll give you a better bang for your buck, right? You guys got a special fund, yeah, go see them over there. They can take care of you. Conversely, if Philip has a terrible experience, he will gossip again. You're thinking about going to see William? Don't do that. Don't do that, right? And so what that means is if I have a clear strategy, secret number one, and I perform, secret number two, what then happens is that the leverage of my relationship with Philip allows me to compound it to access unknown, untapped resources that all of a sudden mysteriously just get presented to me, and I don't know the source of it, right? Whether it's an organization, individual giving, whether it's an event, whether it's sponsorships, fill in the blank, earned income, the leverage still works here with relationships too.
So this is the piece I'm chomping at the bit to talk about, especially because when you look at the relationship part of it, it plays well whether it's not-for-profit or for-profit, either way, and that is the concept that when you take care of the customer, in my case, from the for-profit side, the customer is easy to define. When you're dealing on the not-for-profit side, you have two different customers. You have the constituent that you're trying to serve, and you have the funder that you're trying to please. Okay, so you have two customers there. So you have to be clear on who you're focused on when you're dealing in this concept. But the idea is if you take care of the customer, the money comes. So obviously on the money side, when you're dealing for not-for-profits, you're talking about the funder at that point. However, if you take care of the customer, the money will come. It's usually because the funder is pleased with the services you're providing to the constituents that they're interested in helping. So either way, dealing with the customer first, the profits come. If you take care of the customer, profits come. And I'll give you a good example. I have a client that's in Nashville, and I started talking to this individual, I don't know, 6 months ago, and we were on pathway to, develop a relationship and so forth. And I told him this is what's going to cost to engage me as a client, and we're talking private one-on-one coaching that I do, which is leveraged a little bit more, because if I'm going to take the time out of my schedule. This is the key. If I'm going to take the time, it's going to cost a little bit more than if I'm meeting with 100 people. I can spread that out across 100 people. So my point is, I didn't go to him and say, in order to meet with me, you need to pay me $1,800. No, what I did is I said, let me understand what your needs are. Let me understand who you are. What are you looking for? What do you need? What are your concerns? And we had, 2 or 3 conversations, and it came to the point now where he is ready to sign a contract. And all of that happened because I was concerned about him as an individual. Now, the second part to this is, and where people get this networking and individual thing wrong, is that if you are on LinkedIn, for example, if you've been on LinkedIn for more than 5 minutes and someone wants to connect with you, what happens? They're trying to sell you something. And that's the hard part about individuals that come out of the sales world, or even individuals that are new to business, or even the nonprofit world. Their mindset, their focus is, I got to get the money, I got to get the sale, I got to close the deal. And that's not the way it works. And the best example I've heard about that is, if you're out somewhere and you see someone you're single and you see someone that's attractive to you, you don't go up to them, or at least I hope you don't, and say, hey, you look really good to me, let's get married. No, you do something else. Maybe you stand there and talk to them for a minute. You buy them something to drink or something to eat, or maybe you ask them out on a date. Or so you're spending time investing in that individual before you get to the sale, before you close the deal, right? And that is part of that focus on the individual, and the money will come part as well.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think as people are processing this conversation, they're trying to figure out how the conversation of time leverage fits within the realm of their nonprofit. And I just can't stress enough just the necessity for my students who are taking this class, who are listening to this conversation, the necessity to see what they're doing as a multi-pronged approach. And I did a podcast a couple weeks back talking about the example of a nonprofit that gave away vehicles to single mothers, and it was completely fictitious off the top of my head. And I said, there are multiple things that come out of this. Number one, let's say your mission is to help single mothers get from point A to point B, which is a worthy cause. And you want to get them a vehicle so they can take their children to school, go grocery shopping, and get to work. That's awesome. And it's funded by a funder. Well, what if you also had a mechanic program where you taught young adults, returning citizens, how to repair vehicles that were eventually given to the single mothers, who would then use it to go to work, school, daycare, and a grocery store. That too, the mechanic program, that what we call that an apprenticeship program, is funded by a funder and the state, maybe federal government, right? So you got grants coming in. Now, what people don't realize, and this is what we teach in the masterclass, the idea of earned income should emanate from core competencies that you develop. Now, you hear a lot when newbies start nonprofits, Philip, that they want to do cupcake sales, chicken dinners, fish fries, Girl Scout cookies, car washes, the whole nine. And it's a disaster because nobody's ever really ran those type of businesses before, but they want to do it for a fundraiser, which really isn't a fundraiser. They're money losers, just so you know. But what people overlook in the example I'm giving is that you spend so much time inherently and tacitly learning how to purchase vehicles or acquire them for free or at a steep discount. You don't realize that you have now learned the wholesale game of acquiring vehicles, which then opens up the door for a couple of things. What would it mean to not only have the grant revenue coming in for your women's program, single mothers program, and your mechanics program, but what would it also look like for you to leverage, if you will, your ability to acquire these vehicles to now sell them to the open market, maybe at a discount or even market rate? What would it look like if you not only had your young mechanics program fix the vehicles that belong to the single mothers, but also turn them into mechanics that compete with the local Toyota, Ford dealership, and Pep Boys, and people can come and get their oil change, brakes change, transmission change, all their fluids changed at your facility? What would it look like for you to acquire a plot of land and develop your own CarMax where you sell your own vehicles and then you rent out parts of the land to a competing car dealership and they pay rent to you to sell on your lot? What I just listed was what it looks like to have leveraged revenue that makes you sustainable, like my book, right? If you don't have it, go get it. I teach you also what I just talked about is leverage right down there. And this Grant Writing 101 book, right there, the whole trifecta is right there. But what I just gave you as an example is what it means to use one program to get revenue from multiple sources, and it's all connected. It's not different. It's not weird. It's not strange. Don't tell me that people from the community won't pay for maintenance services for the vehicle with a nonprofit that they know is doing good work. Don't tell me that, because if that exists in my community and I believe in your mission, instead of donating money, I'll pay for a service and you'll get my money 3-4 times a year because I got to maintain my vehicle 3-4 times a year. Maybe I got to get a car for my kid. I'd rather buy from the local nonprofit and give my money and the profits to that nonprofit because I know that they're also going to bless the single mom. They're going to take that kid off the street who just got home from prison and give him a job to work with his hands because that's what he wants to do. They're going to give the kid who wants to do sales an opportunity to make massive commissions. You're building up managers and directors. And maybe, just maybe, Philip, you might get really good at this and do something called franchising, where you franchise your nonprofit, franchise your businesses. You create business owners of community members who were once troubled and highly barriered, who are now entrepreneurs and CEOs. When you hear that example, I mean, how does that sit with you as we talk about this conversation of time leverage, tech leverage, skill leverage, the whole concept of leverage?
Well, first of all, I mean, that is the essence of leverage. And, you know, the cool thing is, which I think I've mentioned to you before, I come out of the housing world. You know, I worked for public housing years ago, and I started to see this concept happen in the late 80s, early 90s. And so this is a fantastic idea. And I do want to say that if you're a for-profit listening to this, if you're one of the very lucky people that has connected with William, and you're like, I'm sticking in this even though I'm not a not-for-profit, let me just tell you something very clearly. If you're a for-profit, you have every power within you to create a social entrepreneurship, socially sustainable business model that can be for profit, that very well supports some of these not-for-profit ideals. Not only can you go rent pieces of property from a not-for-profit and do business with them, but there are other things that you can do. I mean, you can support these socially sustainable ideas. You can hire, for goodness sakes, you can hire some of these people that were in the apprentice program. Or you could say, I want to train some of these people and create your own apprentice program. And the reason why I refer back to my experience in public housing is because in 1989, 1990 timeframe, I was writing grants for public assisted housing through HUD. And back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, HUD had a really strong initiative to create drug-free housing. In other words, people that were drug-free living in public housing. Because back then, and William, I think you're a little younger than me, so you may not remember this one, but back then, if you were caught doing drugs, if you were arrested for dealing or doing drugs, whether it was on federal public housing property or not, you were kicked out of housing. Okay.
So years later, I worked in public housing, and that was still true in the early 2000s. Oh yeah.
So you understand this, right? So our whole goal was to, and I wrote a grant that ended up getting funded over, it was multiple year funding. It ended up being like a $30 million grant over the multiple years. But the point I'm trying to make is part of that program, we took um, we took people out of housing and we brought them into the offices, the administrative office there at the public housing. And I was in the executive offices, so I actually set up a clerical pool, and I was teaching people how to type and file and open mail and do the basic, how to photocopy. I mean, some of these people, they didn't even have a high school diploma, and we ended up helping them, eventually go back. We even had it built in where we would pay them to go for their GED if they completed certain requirements to get there. My whole point in this is, if you're a for-profit, there's absolutely no reason why you can't do these similar things. Obviously you're going to have to self-fund it in many cases. There's no reason why you to some of these not-for-profits and say, hey, I'm looking for these type of people. I want to train them. I want to give back to the community. I may not have a lot of money to pour into your program, but I have time leverage. Now you're getting a service. Maybe maybe the deal is you have to pay them whatever the going rate is. That's fine. You needed to pay someone to do it anyway, but you also are teaching a skill so these individuals can be a successful member of your community. And I've seen some of these years later. I mean, we're talking 30 years later. I have gone back to my hometown and run into people and I've communicated with people through Facebook who went through this program, and now they're like, mid-level managers in an organization or something. And they're like, had I not had that, I would be living in housing, multi babies, and in poverty. And I'm not trying to cast dispersion here. I'm just speaking a reality of what they're telling me would have happened to them. Generationally cursed, all the things that happened, but they were saying that this freed them from those things. So if you're a business owner listening to this, you understand that it's not about profit. I'm a capitalist, and I'm unapologetic as a capitalist. Okay, I love the idea of making money, but the reason why I like making money is because it's got the power to help, and that to me, as to why you're a capitalist or a business owner that's a capitalist, is that you have something burning within that's greater than you yourself. If you talk to a real entrepreneur, the last thing that they're talking about is buying that Lamborghini or that Maserati. That may be nice one day, but a true entrepreneur, that's not what they're about. They're about creating something that makes a difference in the world. And if you're one of those people and you're listening to this, the sky's the limit, and you got to find a way to leverage your time and your money and your resources and your technology and your local services to be able to accomplish these things.
Man, I so agree with that. And I love this point you brought up about creating social ventures. This ties into secret 3 of raising serious money: relationships bridge gaps. And, you may be a nonprofit wondering, how do I do this? How do I make this happen? In some cases, if you're super entrepreneurial, you can make it happen on your own. If you're a semi-entrepreneurial or not really entrepreneurial, you can partner with a socially conscious entrepreneur, business owner who wants to do portions of what you do and create a 50-50 partnership where you split the proceeds, or you put up some money and you invest in their business and become a stockholder, a shareholder, with this particular for-profit, which means that you're now, getting dividends on a quarterly basis, semi-annual basis, or annual basis. So there are so many things that one could do to leverage. As we wrap up, Philip, is there a piece of the cheat code you're willing to share with folks that can be blanketly applied that can help somebody as they're trying to figure out how do I make sense of this once and for all?
And there's so much rich material there. um, Here's the first thing I'd say to you. Um, you're not going to know everything, okay? And it's okay. I have been in the business world 30 years. I started out entrepreneurially when I was like 10. But I've been in the business world, quote unquote, corporate through self-employed for about 30 years. I don't know everything. My first business in the year 2000, 20 years ago now, I had no customers. I had no product. I had just an idea and about $100 in my pocket. So this idea, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of equipment. You need, a facility. You need whatever. It's all excuses. You can't be everything. You can't be at the pinnacle of your business 2 weeks into it. You got to start somewhere. Okay. If that means that you got to start your business on a bicycle or walking or whatever, there's no reason why you can't hustle it and get it done. All right. My first business, I had no customers. I had no money, but I had this idea. So this is the piece I'm going to give away for you. If you have this idea and you don't know where you're going to go with it, you don't know how you're going to find somebody, what you do is you say, who would buy this? Who would need this? Where do I find them? Where do they hang out? Where do they shop? Where do they go to the grocery store? Where do they party or go to entertainment? Do they walk their dog? Do they walk their kid? I mean, whatever. The point is, if you start with very simple questions, keep it simple, and you say, okay, I know where they're at, I know what they want, and then you find a way to get to know them. What William's talking about, that relationship thing, is so important. Now, you may need to do this through social media. You may need to get out there and start doing videos. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to know anything. You're not going to know what you're doing. You're not going to know how to do it. You're going to sound like a fool. I can assure you, if you wanted to spend the time, you can go find me on YouTube, and you can find some of the videos I did back in 2007, 2008 timeframe. I looked like a dork. I sounded like a dork. I probably still sound like a dork, but my point is, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be polished. Stop worrying about that stuff. You're not going to know everything you need to know, but you know enough. You know exactly what you need to know. You need to ask yourself some basic questions, and you need to go every day trying to figure it out. My final point in this, you have to remember, one size does not fit all. You're going to have to find what works for you. Just because it works for me doesn't mean you're going to do it exactly the way I do it. But here is the bigger point that you need to understand. You have to go every day and work at it, because business is the longest running experiment in history. Think about that. Business is the longest running experiment in history, because we have to test it, see if it works. If I say to you, hey, I've got this great idea for earbuds, and nobody knows what an earbud is, then I have to really figure out, okay, how am I going to explain to them what this product is? That's what business is all about. It's experimentation. And when you figure something out, guess what? It's going to last. But I'm going to tell you right now, McDonald's is not successful because they stayed the same. In fact, if they stayed the same, you'd still be buying your Big Mac in a styrofoam container. Okay? Business is an experiment of trial and error. Tastes change, needs change, the world changes. I mean, look at this COVID-19 situation we're in. Who would have thought 6 months ago that 40 to 50% of the working population would be working from home? I thought of it. You can ask William because he and I talked about it. But everyone laughed at me when I was telling them that. Now, William didn't laugh at me in his defense, but a lot of people laughed at me. You don't know what you're talking about. I said, I may not know what I'm talking about, but I'm telling you it's going to happen. I couldn't have predicted COVID-19. I could not have predicted a pandemic. I think the pandemic forced this to happen. My point in all this is life changes, situations change, the world changes, and you can't stay stationary. You're going to have to continually be aware of what's going on, and you're going to have to test, and adjust and adjust and adjust. It's kind of like if you have ever gone sailing. Sailors tack, they go back and forth because you got to catch the wind in your sails, right? Even when you're not sailing, sometimes you'll see sailboats tacking, going back and forth. If you don't pay attention to the compass, though, as you're tacking, meaning you're adjusting as you go, you'll get off course. So you have to stay focused on your mission while you're doing this and adjust as you go. As long as you're heading in the direction of where you want to go, you're eventually going to get there. But if you're not paying attention to your goal, you're going to get off course.
Dr. Philip Foster, thank you, man.